morning, ladies and gentlemen. Another edition of the opening line, college football. I'm going to be breaking it down today. Frank and I, as always, on Wednesdays here. Frank, how we doing? I know you're not in your office, if you will. You're a little vacay maybe, but how we doing this week? How was last week? How we doing overall?
I like talking a little better than sitting in middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, I suppose. Double opening line though for me today, which is exciting. We just did Paulie and I just did PGA. If you guys want to jump over there, you can watch that video. A lot of good stuff going on there. Austin and I obviously doing college football as usual. 3-2 last week, so after the horrendous start, 5-0, 3-2, 3-2, sort of grinding it back. It's sort of the trials and tribulations of what is sports betting in general, but certainly the randomness that involves a few minutes of football action and gets a little bit crazy. So I'm sure we'll have some bad ones, but so far it's been 3 good weeks and we're getting on the plus side of things here.
Yeah, I sent it last week. I had 12 plays, and like you said, wow. the when you have that many, we talk all the time about like college basketball Saturdays, and there's just so many plays. And like if you have, definitely in college football, like if you have a lot of plays in one week and have a bad week, like it's really tough to dig out. Thankfully, I went 8-4. Things went well. I've only had one bad week so far this year. Like I'm just trying to stay above water the rest of the season here. So hopefully we can avoid some bad weeks here. But before we get started, as always, if you miss any of the show, you can go back and watch on Twitch at Elite Betting, on YouTube at the Elite Sports Network. Hit the follow and subscribe buttons there. You can get notifications when we go live for any show that comes from the channel. So yeah, let's get right into it. Biggest game of the weekend, number 3 versus number 4 in the national polls. Not sure many people who do modeling are rating Iowa as the fourth or third best team in the country. But Iowa is favored in this game, -1.5. It's come down to super low total for a college football game, 40.5. I had some friends ask me what I thought the total was going to be before the lines came out, and I didn't think we'd see 40.5, but here we are. What do you got on this game?
Yeah, I thought maybe we'd see 45, 44. Yeah, this is as low as of a total that you're going to see, but I did make it 41. So I guess I agree there. Interesting game here. I mean, I read somewhere this is the first top 5 Big Ten matchup that didn't involve Ohio State since 1997. And I think it was Penn State. Someone else said that. I stopped paying attention after Ohio State, but yeah, I agree. I don't know that many teams have Iowa, or many people have Iowa rated this highly. I don't, and they would sort of indicate to me that they would be underdogs on a neutral field here, right? So they're playing at home. They're only 1.5 point favorites, especially with such a low total. Obviously, that shrinks the margins a little bit, but I do agree that I think Penn State is the better team here. Iowa has made its way to this spot with turnovers, right? Like they just have turned the ball over defensively, which is a thing, right? That is a skill, I suppose, but it is highly random, and typically good teams don't really rely on turnovers, and good teams teams that do rely on turnovers eventually end up in a situation where the randomness really doesn't go their way. And this could be this week for Iowa. Penn State team that has turned it over 3 times all year. Granted, the offense hasn't been great, but Penn State's defense could pretty much stack up against this Iowa defense. I think it's just as good. They just haven't had the massive flux of turnovers. I think there was like 7 turnovers in this Iowa-Maryland game last week. Obviously, they blew them out to a ridiculous margin, but I just don't see Penn State turning it over that much. And even if they are sluggish, even if they are slow on offense, I do think Penn State's the better team here. I think they just hold on the ball. I don't think Iowa's really going to score against them as long as they don't turn it over or any pick 6 happens. So I think I don't mind playing Penn State here. In all honesty, I didn't play anything in this game, but the randomness in terms of Iowa, I think this could be the week where that sort of backfires a little bit.
Yeah, 7 turnovers forced by that Iowa defense last week. They had one against Kent State and Colorado State. Both games kind of were close. And this is what we see, right, with teams that play great defense. They play slow overall as well. And their offense is just bad. Like, it's not good. It's not even like past Iowa's never been known as like a high flying offense or anything. But in the past, they've been able to like be respectable. This year, they're not. Like, they're averaging 4.8 yards per play this year. That includes games against Kent State. Maryland's defense is solid. Indiana, sure. Like, but you would like to see more from the number 3 team in the country. But yeah, I played Penn State money line here, plus 109. I agree. I think they're the better team. I can't get behind this spread. Like, it was 2.5. 2.5 was maybe a little bit interesting. Definitely with this probably being a low-scoring, close game coming down to a field goal. But I don't know. I live 5 minutes from Penn State's campus, if anybody noticed. And, like, I should just be driving by when they have practice and screaming over the fence to the practice field, just take care of the ball. Because if they don't turn it over, this should be not an easy win. But it's hard to see how Iowa – can score, because like you said, even if you want to say Iowa's defense is better than Penn State's, it's by a very small amount. Like, this isn't like a glaring difference. One thing to note, I have obviously a bunch of friends that are huge Penn State fans. They're talking about how Iowa's so lucky, the turnovers aren't going to happen. And sure, the turnovers have given them really short fields that could stop. But I went back and looked. I looked at the teams in the Big Ten because they kind of all play the similar offenses. Michigan has forced on defense an average of 2 turnovers just once since 2015. Penn State, I think, has done it once as well. And these teams have had good defenses for the past number of years. Ohio State has done it twice. Iowa's done it 4 out of the last 5 years. Like, there is something to it, definitely with like interceptions more so than fumbles. There is a little bit to that. But again, if Penn State just takes care of the ball, it's going to be really hard for Iowa to keep pace here. I think Iowa does keep Penn State's big playability away from them, but sometimes athletes just matter, and sometimes I do think models can miss that because this is such a difference in athletes here. I really think Penn State can take over here and just really not turn the ball over. Don't let Iowa have a 10-yard drive for a touchdown here. So
and Penn State only converting like 36% of its third downs. But again, I'm okay with punts in a total of 40, right? Like, that. Don't give them short fields. Don't give Iowa the chances to just put up points right away.
Yeah, and they have now, and that is another thing. I'm glad you brought that up. I forgot. Iowa has one of the best punters in the country too, so they have this on top. Like, you have a yard or a drive stall at your own 25, and he flips the field to the other 25, and you have a good defense. That matters. So field position is going to matter in this one. Again, Penn State, just don't turn the ball over, and you'll be fine. Like, that's pretty much the key to this one. So, another ranked matchup, team that Penn State beat early in the year in a close game at home. 3:30 start Eastern time. Georgia at Auburn. Auburn a 15.5-point favorite. Another low total. 46.5 is being hung out there for these two teams. Georgia has a little bit of injury concerns. They're starting to kind of pile up here for being, them and Alabama being separated. You don't want to have all the injuries. JT Daniels, questionable here. What do you got about this game?
I don't know that I care. There's obviously the market doesn't, right? They're still 15.5-point favorites. I just think Georgia and Alabama are far and away the best team. A couple weeks ago, I would have said Alabama, but this Georgia defense has been unbelievably good. I should say their offensive line and their defensive line might be the two best lines in the country. It's pretty absurd how good both those sides are. I was texting with you last week watching the Georgia game, just how ridiculously fast and big their defensive line is. But the JT Daniels news, obviously I'd rather have him than not have him. But Stetson Bennett played some last year. He's playing well this year. He's completing over 70% of his passes. Now, limited sample, sure, against marginal competition, Auburn will be a decent test for them. Maybe better than, maybe they are better than Clemson. I was not quite Clemson. Maybe they are better than Clemson at this point. Again, the offensive line has been phenomenal. The run blocking has been phenomenal, and they're not going to have to score many points. I mean, we're seeing a 46.5-point total here to get through this game. So their defensive lines allowed 67 yards rushing on average this season. They've allowed 110 yards passing on average this season. Again, not the best competition from what we've seen, and some of the better teams that they've played have proven to not really be very good on offense. But it's still sort of ridiculous to watch this defense play. You know it when you see it, sort of thing, and you watch them play. And you talked about athletes in the last game. this is a big step up for Georgia. I thought JT Daniels was going to have an amazing year. Obviously, the injuries haven't been great, but I'm not in the camp of quarterbacks mattering as much in college as they do other places. I think it's more of a system thing, and I think we've seen that with Stetson Bennett stepping in and being plenty good enough to win this game, and being plenty good enough, I suppose, to be a 15-point favorite in this game.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned just college quarterbacks. I do believe same thing. It is system, and Georgia's system is not like Oklahoma's. If Oklahoma, I know they've been a little bit worse than their years past, but with throwing the ball as much as they do and how they throw downfield all the time, Georgia, there's a chance that if Georgia just ran the ball in every play in this game, they could win.
Yeah,
there's a chance of that. Like, there's not many teams that could say that. I really hate this matchup for Auburn. We saw Auburn play against Penn State. Bo Nix, he was pulling all the kind of Johnny Manziel-esque plays last week against LSU. Probably not going to be able to do that against this Georgia defense. And when he faced Penn State's defense, he's just not a great thrower. He can make plays. He's athletic. But Auburn, they started to have success. I thought they got too pass happy against Penn State. They had some success running the ball. Tank Bigsby is a fantastic running back for them. I just don't think you're going to be able to run the ball on this Georgia defense. We look at the injuries. They do have a linebacker and a defensive lineman that are injured, but it's mainly JT Daniels and basically their entire wide receiver group is questionable. So the defense is still going to be fantastic. I've been looking like EPA per play. They're number one in defense, success rate, pretty much any metric you want to go at. They haven't given up a point for the last two games. They've back-to-back shutouts here. I just don't think Auburn's going to be able to rely on Bo Nix here, and I don't think you're going to be able to run the ball. So it could be another game where Georgia wins like 31 because there's injuries. Auburn's defense is pretty solid, 31-3 or something like that. But it's really difficult for me to see Auburn. This is kind of like Auburn going up against Georgia's defense, kind of like Iowa going up against Penn State's defense. If Georgia takes care of the ball, they should easily, try to get healthy and get through this game before. Now they do play in the East. They don't have the crazy schedule, but again, this defense is the best in the country. I don't know, like you said, maybe Auburn is better than Clemson at this point, but it's really difficult to see Auburn scoring points in this one.
I'm sort of just looking at the schedule here. You're getting Florida on the road, they're getting Kentucky at home, and this seems like the biggest test for them. Auburn on the road. If you played this game at home, the line suggested it would be north of 20, which is just hilarious to think about. This might be their biggest test remaining. This might be the most vulnerable spot remaining. And I know that Kentucky wouldn't beat Florida, but I'm not prepared to say that even Kentucky is better than Auburn right now. So, Georgia's going to be obviously heavy favorites and more heavily favored, I think, in every single game, right? Probably until the championship game, assuming I think it's probably safe to assume they're going to get there. So, you look at the back half of their schedule, especially if there are times to get healthy, they're going to have a Missouri game, a Tennessee game, right? That they're going to be able to cruise through with me or you playing quarterback. So I think that, this is sort of probably the biggest hurdle for them in terms of getting to the playoffs. If they were to lose this game, they'd be less than a field goal underdogs, potentially even, close to pick them if they played Alabama, I think, assuming that they're healthy. So, I had, again, 2 weeks ago, you asked me the same question. I said Alabama was far and away the best team. I think Georgia's within a point or so in my model, just because the defense has been so damn good and the Alabama offense not as efficient as what we've seen. So this, again, maybe the biggest hurdle for them for the, playoff contention. And again, we're talking about teams in the top 4, top 5, top 6, like like a Penn State, like an Iowa, like Oklahoma, right? Like, these teams have obvious holes that Georgia doesn't seem to have. Like, sure, you want a little bit more on offense, but it doesn't really matter when you never give up any points.
Right. That's a good point. The neutral game against Florida, they have Auburn this week. Florida, they can't throw the ball, right? They're efficient running it, which is just, again, a bad matchup against Georgia. And then the rest of that schedule, Georgia Tech, the same thing. They have a very explosive offense, but it's usually explosive through the ground, through running the ball. So things do do match up here, and they really, like, you could argue that they don't need to score more than 28 points the rest of the year, and they probably win every game, which is pretty absurd in today's college football. One thing to note, you made a good point. If this game was flipped, Georgia was at home, they'd be about 20-point favorites. Auburn, when they went to Penn State number 4, right? That game closed at like 5. Penn State was favored by 5. We just want to put in perspective of how distant Georgia and Alabama are truly from the rest of the country right now. So Oklahoma and Texas. Next game, Red River Showdown. This is the typical, like, Oklahoma's been a little shaky. Texas is, after getting blown out by Arkansas, they're starting to play well. Are we buying into Texas here as 3.5-point dogs, total of 63 in this game? Can Texas, Steve Sarkisian, they made a change at quarterback. Things have been going better. Can Texas and pull this one off and really make this Big 12 race kind of interesting and probably knock the Big 12 out of the playoff race?
It was very close to playing Oklahoma again. I played them last week. I feel like we've gone a little bit too far. And of course, they gave up a gimmick touchdown with 1:20 left to backdoor that spread on me. I know better than to do that too. I laid the 10, I'm closing at like 12, right? I do think this number may go up throughout the week, through the end of the back half of the week. Oklahoma took some money last week. They should have covered. That typically means you may see some money coming in on them. But this is a lot different opponent this week. Like you said, Sarkisian switched quarterbacks here, and they're 3-0, right? They're playing much better on offense. They're scoring a lot more points, and we would have expected that with Steve Sarkisian coming in to Texas this season. And obviously, he's putting the athletes in the right spots. They have a sophomore quarterback, junior, or running back. Bijan Robinson has been really good. Casey Thompson, again, has been good at quarterback. But yeah, like, does Oklahoma get going here, right? Like, this is a spot where they put a statement on, and they've played very subpar competition at this point. They have won all those games. I think every single one, maybe besides one game, has been one score, right? They've played really close games. That is a beneficial thing. I do think that, okay, we've been here before. I'm sure you've played on baseball teams where it seems like it comes down to the last pitch every week, right? Yeah. You feel a little bit more confident when you get put in those situations, but you're also a lot more vulnerable, right? So, the Texas offense, like you said, has gotten going here. Robinson, 6.2 yards per carry. Like, he's been phenomenal. We know Oklahoma's defense is never anything decent. They're going to have to score. And is this the game where Spencer Rattler actually shows up? He's been horrid. He was supposed to be a top draft pick, as a lot of these Oklahoma quarterbacks end up being. He's been horrid. He just hasn't been any good. And they've scored a lot of points, but not quite in the Oklahoma style that we would have seen, and a lot less efficient so far this season. So I was close to playing Oklahoma. I think you could still play Oklahoma. This line was 3. It's gone up to 3.5, which is a significant move. I thought it was going to be closer to 4. I don't know. The Oklahoma to open in these markets hasn't seen a lot of respect in the last 2 weeks. But the steam has gone their way. So we'll see what happens here. Obviously, sky high total here, 63.5, just because both these offenses are going to move the ball, I think. And they may come down to last possession. But again, Oklahoma's been here. I think Texas is still pretty vulnerable, especially on defense. It's just a matter of whether Rattler actually shows up to play this game or not. And we haven't seen it yet really this season, but they've also won every game. So they're keeping themselves in it. They need a statement game somewhere, like you said, to stay in the playoff contention.
Yeah, it's interesting. Oklahoma's kind of a team that I could see so many ranges of outcome for them. Like, I could just see, like, the big problem is Rattler has not hit throws downfield. He's not been accurate, and like, they're still putting up points, right? Like, so that's still like this is the difference between what we've seen from Oklahoma the last 5-6 years, definitely since Lincoln Riley's came into the head coaching position there. They just haven't hit the big throws, and they played a close game against Tulane. Tulane's offense is solid, okay, like, they were winning that game. Kind of got, like, it was one of those ones where they got out to a lead, and then Tulane kind of stormed back, and then they got caught. Tulane had the ball last possession of the game there. Nebraska is, like, sneaky solid. They're just a terribly coached team, but they have done this forever. They play teams, like, kind of tough. They just don't win because they're just not coached well. I saw someone perfectly sum up Nebraska, and, like, they have this great drawn up play, and Adrian Martinez is fantastic, and then the next play they have a false start. It's kind of like the Angels. There's jokes going around about like, oh, Shohei Ohtani did this for the first time since 1918, and Trout did this for the first time from 1937, and the Angels lose 8-3. Yeah, West Virginia is solid. Like, I think they've played like okay teams, just none of them are good. And I don't necessarily think Texas is a great team here. I think their offense is good, but I think their defense is not great. Last week they had they were fortunate on turnovers. They only won but TCU by 5. TCU just lost to SMU. Like, TCU is not anything great. So I think we're getting a little like, it's kind of like a buy low spot, sell high spot on Texas, in my opinion. It just seems like one of those spots. I was very close to playing Oklahoma here as well. If this was 3, it would be, I'd have to think about it here just in case.
Definitely inside of 3 out of it on this.
Yeah, inside of 3 for sure. Rattlers' inaccuracy does kind of worry me because that's not exact. Deep ball accuracy is not something that just like, I know it can be random, but if you're like, he's been terrible on some deep throws, and it's just I'd like to see a little bit more here. But
maybe they switch the game plan with a little bit of a soft X defense, and they get some more intermediate crossing routes and things like that. But it's just not really their style, right? They kind of go for it,
right? Like it's tough to just like change your we like to throw the ball downfield because that's what our playbook is, and he's still averaging 7.9 yards per attempt. Like, it's still good.
But these have been bad teams, and he just.
It just hasn't been Oklahoma in years past. They're averaging, and there's a FCS game thrown in here with this metric, but 6.4 yards per play. I think they're like 29th in EPA per play. Against this type of schedule the last 5 years, they would be top 5. Like easily top 5, and basically every offensive metric you're going to look at. So they just haven't clicked yet, and really that the difference is Rattler throwing.
I'm curious where you have them ranked. Obviously, if they get through with how much Clemson and some other teams towards the top here have struggled. If they somehow get through the schedule, where do you like? I still have them ranked in the top 5 here. Where do you have them?
I have them ranked 6th, but really, like, honestly, 4 through like 9 for me is really like not that big of a difference. Like, 1 week, the team in 8th could jump to like 4th if the teams ahead of them have bad games. But no, you're right. Like, looking at their schedule, nobody in the Big 12 has. I feel like you either are like good on one side or just like there's no like 2 solid teams. Like Oklahoma State, I think their defense is pretty solid, but I don't think their offense can do anything. Like, their offense has really struggled to score points so far this year. I don't think that's if you can lure Oklahoma to playing a low scoring game like West Virginia did, they almost pulled it off, right? Like, they were right there. It's just it's kind of like Ohio State. The longer that Oklahoma has to figure this out on offense, it's just like less of a chance. It's kind of like the Big Ten. The Big Ten's trending that way, right? Like Michigan, Iowa, Penn State, they're all like, oh, we can maybe win this year because Ohio State makes some changes to their defense. We'll see as the season goes on if that's real. Offense is starting to kick it into gear. Now I'm sitting here like, yeah, Ohio State's going to win the Big Ten, and we're all going to be like we're all excited, right? Like, oh my gosh, we might have some parity. And then the playoff is going to be Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma, Ohio State. We're going to be like, what the hell happened here? Like, we were so close. But
it still could happen. I think the big test is going to be that Penn State Ohio State game. I know we're a little bit past Penn State here in the video, but that seems to always be the litmus test for Penn State. But I think Ohio State now is particularly vulnerable on offense with Stroud there. So, but yeah, I mean, this is the biggest test left for Oklahoma. I mean, we talked about them skating through a bad schedule, but if they go undefeated, no one else is doing this. So, I know Oklahoma State is like ranked 12th or something, but I don't think they're any good. I think Texas is a far better team at this point. And I think the market indicates that. We'll see though how this game goes. I think they have to win out because they just haven't looked very good. So, I'm pretty sure they're going to have to win out, but they're going to be favored in every game. So we'll see what happens.
The only benefit I give to Oklahoma and possibly not needing to win out is the fact that the rest of college football is just a mess. Like, Oregon just lost, right? Ohio State already has a loss. If Ohio State loses again, super uphill battle. Like I'm looking at other teams ranked ahead, like behind Oklahoma. Ohio State has a loss. Oregon has a loss. Michigan, the Big Ten is probably going to cannibalize themselves. Michigan State's behind them. BYU, are we really going to like? if like again, Cincinnati could drop one.
There's a very clean route for Cincinnati, right? Like,
I mean, like UCF, their quarterback got hurt, so like that was one of their toughest tests. Like my only worry is the AAC is trending like in the wrong direction, and Indiana, Notre Dame, like before the season, Indiana and Notre Dame were supposed to be like pretty good. Like that's what the public perception was, and both of them, even though Notre Dame's only lost one game, have not looked great. Like Indiana could end up 6-6, so that win's not going to boost them. That's my worry that the committee could just say like, sorry, like you literally beat a half a good team in Notre Dame this year. Like I don't know what did you want to do.
Yeah, with Jack Cohn being injured, I know he played, but
they literally they were so much better with their third string quarterback, and he can't throw. Like that's how injured Jack Cohn was. It was a pretty crazy game. But like Temple's bad. UCF they get in 2 weeks. They have their quarterback Dylan Gabriel just got hurt on the walk-off pick 6 that he threw. Navy, Tulane, like they have a game against SMU's interesting, and then obviously the American Championship game. But like I can just see it. They're already ranked pretty high. We'll see what the committee ranks them.
I think they're gonna need Ohio State to lose one of these tough games they have coming up, at least one of them. And
they really need the Big Ten to lose.
They're gonna need Oklahoma to lose Saturday, right? Like that's
they basically what needs to happen is like Ohio State to beat Penn State, and then Penn State to beat Michigan, and then Michigan to beat Ohio State. Like have the home team win all of those games. So then Ohio State has 2 losses, so it's very difficult to go in. And I don't know what tiebreaker, how that ends up working out, where they all have 1 loss in the conference. Who goes to the Big Ten championship game? But like that's you need the Big Ten to cannibalize themselves. Oregon's likely to drop another game. They're not a super strong team. BYU's not getting ahead of them. Like it's a year that it might just fall into the playoff. Like Cincinnati can be super unimpressive the rest of the year, and there might be no one to put in there.
And they're good. I mean, they're
so I agree. I think I have them ranked. I have them ranked 8th. So like it's not like they're a bad team. It's just it's just the whole. All right, who have they played? All that stuff. And again, the tough part is it's probably going to ruin it for the group of 5 if they do get in, because they're going to get smoked against Alabama. Like absolutely, there's just no chance for them.
Or even Georgia. I mean, they're gonna if they play.
Yeah, depending whoever's ranked number 1, it's just not gonna go well. So, got a little off track there from games, but we got some bets coming your way here. Oregon State at Washington State. We have a couple that we agree on here. We're going to break down. Washington State +4 total in this game 59. We both agree on this game here. So what do we like in this one?
This game's starting to move up a little bit. 59 now. I think it was 58.5 yesterday. We're on the over here, right? I like the over. I played over 59. Looks like you got a 58.5 after it came down a little bit after I bet it. I still like it. I think this is. I think Washington State's defense is getting a little bit too much credit for who they've played. And you look at how they've played and how they've won games. They gave up 6 points to Cal last week. I don't really care about that. It's been the running defense for Washington State. They gave up 200 plus to I think it was Utah and Utah State. They only gave up 48 yards on the ground to USC, but USC torched them through the air. So I do like Oregon State. Oregon State's a very run heavy. They're very good at running, the top 15 in rushing offense this season. The defense for Oregon State is not very good, but my main edge coming here is that I think the market is valuing Washington State's defense a little bit too much because of the schedule they've played and the fact that, they played 2 decent running teams and 2 decent scoring teams in Utah and Utah State, and just got torched on the ground. So I do like Oregon State to sort of running a lot here. I do like Oregon State a little bit. I wasn't really willing to lay the 3.5 on the road here with a, not a very good team. But I do like the over 59 a little bit more than that.
Yep, same thing. I couldn't agree more. So much in college football and just football in general is we overreact to small sample sizes. Like it I know the markets are efficient
schedules and
like it happens in the NFL. Like I know the NFL is super, super efficient, but like there are times that we overreact. Like it's just how it goes. Like every like the Rams crushed the Bucks, right? And then I personally thought Arizona was getting too many points early in the week. That number went crazy away, and I still thought they were getting a little bit too many, and then Arizona smokes the Rams. Like we just have this again. 1 game samples don't mean that much. Washington State, their EPA per rush on defense ranks 95th in the country this year. You look at Oregon State, like you said, this matchup works well. EPA per rush on offense for Oregon State this year, 18th. So they're really just going to run all over. I think Oregon State's offense is pretty solid. I don't think Washington State's defense is good, even though they've put up good numbers. I think this is a below average unit. I think Oregon State, the current leaders of the Pac-12 North, by the way, I think they pretty much do whatever they want on offense. The thing that does worry me with when the edge, if you will, I think Oregon State will be able to pass the ball on them too, but when a team likes to run the ball, the clock is churning. That does scare me. And Washington State's offense is not very good either, but I don't think Oregon State's defense is very good. So It's one of those things where I think Oregon State can really score points here, and Washington State should be able to do their part. Like I always like when, I'm on more unders than overs, and that's typical how this works. But when I do bet an over, it's usually on a team that has a bad offense, but like they're facing a team that has a bad defense, and you're getting to the point where it's like, okay, just give me 3 scores, Washington State. Give me, like, if you can give me 4, great. Like I think we're easily there. So I think Washington State can score on this Oregon State defense, and I think Oregon State has a great day on offense in this game.
I don't want to, Washington State just hasn't been efficient in getting into the end zone. They're going to throw the ball maybe 40 times in this game.
Yeah.
I don't want to take too much away. I think it was the USC game or sorry, the Utah game. The Utah game where Jane Delore didn't play, but when he's in there, he typically throws the ball somewhere around 40 times. So you're getting a defense against an offense that is extremely good at running the ball, as we mentioned. Washington State can't really defend the run that well from what we've seen, and an Oregon State defense that isn't particularly good, and a Washington State offense that has thrown for a ton of yards. They just haven't finished off drives. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think I like both matchups here.
Yeah, Washington State 9 turnovers in the last 3 games. It's just really hard to score points when you're turning the ball over that much. Like you said, it's if you're turning, you can drive 60 yards down the field, be in the red zone, and then all of a sudden throw an interception, and it's still a good overall drive. You just had one play that just totally killed it. Predictive, looking at a predictive standpoint, I do think Washington State can score on this Oregon State defense, and Oregon State's offense is kind of fun. It's I think an underrated unit.
They probably won't run. They probably won't throw it more than 20 times.
Yeah, right? It's one of those. They've thrown their opening game against Purdue. They were losing. They threw 38 times, but since then they threw 29 against Hawaii. I'm not counting the game against Idaho because I don't care. USC, they threw 19 times. Last week they threw 15 times against Washington. So their quarterback, Chance Nolan, averaging 9.1 yards per attempt. So it's one of those things where, they don't, when they do throw it, it's usually an explosive play here. So, but they have 4 guys who've already rushed for 100 yards this year. So I'm with you. Over, we're both on over 58. I got 58.5, got lucky, a little tick down. We're coming up. Hopefully this closes well into the 60s by the time they kick off on Saturday. And I think this is a night game? Pac-12 after dark for this one? No, this is mid-afternoon, so never mind. Always get a little crazy with those Pac-12 after dark games. They got to keep the viewership numbers up on the East Coast. Central Michigan and Ohio. Ohio is +6. Total in this game is 57 now. If you kind of feel bad putting this one on there, I don't know how you feel, but we both played this game at a better number than is out there in the market currently. Would you still play it at this number? Give your breakdown, but would you still play it at current market number?
I wouldn't. I mean, I personally, if this was the number at the beginning of the week, no, I wouldn't play it. But I didn't make this game 59, so I think that if you wanted to play, I do think there is value still to be had there. I played, over 55, a little bit vague. So that's something like 55.5, really, what I played at -115 there. So I think you could still play it if you're like, okay, I want to be on the same side here. You agree with me on this game, and the market obviously is going to end up agreeing with us on this game. Both these teams, Central Michigan, Ohio, MAC game, right? This is always some dangerous territory for me. For some reason, I end up on like half the MAC games throughout the year. But Ohio defensively allowing 32 points on the season and not playing particularly good schedule. I believe they lost to Duquesne, right? So
yes,
first team ever that Duquesne's beat that's actually an FBS school. Very two inconsistent teams, kind of hard to read. Not very comfortable playing. I definitely wouldn't be comfortable playing a side in this game. But Central Michigan 86th in defense, total defense. Ohio's 99th. Right, both they haven't played any sort of schedule, and they've just given up a ton of points. So Curtis Rourke is completing over 65% of his passes. Thrown for 654 yards in that span. Central Michigan allowing 28 points a game, over 400 yards allowed for both these teams so far per game on the season. I think both these quarterbacks are decent. I think both of them will be able to score here. In 55, really not a super high total. I mean, you're talking about, not a very different score here. And this game, 6-point spread should be generally pretty close, should be sort of back and forth. So, I watched a little bit of Central Michigan last couple of weeks, and their receivers are actually very good. I was surprised to see how athletic some of the receivers are, and they should be one of the better teams here in the MAC. So, I think they can run up the score, especially on Ohio with the schedule they've played, allowing 420 yards a game. Definitely read some over here. And like I said, the market generally agrees with me here. So I think you could play 57 if that's what's still out there. 56.5 would obviously be preferable. But again, this is why it's important to bet early. This is why it's important to bet early in the week. Austin and I obviously both playing much better number than what's out there now.
Yeah, I got 55.5, paying some vig too. I just, with seeing that you were on it and it's already moving a half point, and I just didn't want to get I knew it was going to move, and I didn't want to be like, all right, I'll wait. And then something happens, and then all of a sudden I'm sitting here with a 57, Right. And so I'm okay with playing the vig. This is probably like a 56, or even maybe a 56.5. So I still think it's worth a shot at 57. If you get some lower vig, I don't know if I'd be paying like a 57 minus 115 or higher, because you're probably at this point with it already moving, there's probably time to survey the lines a little bit and maybe get a better one, like at even minus 110 or something. But I look at these two teams, and I don't think either offense is that good, but I don't think either defense is that good. I think Central Michigan's defense is poor. Ohio's been one of the worst defenses in the country this year. They gave up 6.5 yards per play to Northwestern. That's all I need to know, that they're just a terrible defense. And another thing that helps out is Central Michigan. If I take away their game from LSU, and I know that might be a little cheating here, but that game was out of hand. It was super slow paced. And, a lot of times when games are blowouts, it's kind of just like, hey, let's get out of here. But every other game has been way above average pace. And, that obviously, when one team is way above average pace and you're only getting 55 points, that's really surprising. And you add in bad defenses and like you said, should be some good quarterback play here. I just thought this number was too low. I think upper 50s is where this should settle. I don't know if we'll quite get there, but we had the move. And that's all you can ask for, right? We got some CLV heading into this one. Hopefully it keeps on running, give us some more CLV, although not too much, because when you get too much, it tends to. Yeah,
we're both on the same side. The market's going our way. This is just.
If this closes 59, 0% chance this is a winner. You might as well buy off and try to middle it in those 3 points. I'm totally kidding. Don't do that. But that's usually how it works here. So, but I'm with you. Fast pace, bad defenses. 55.5 points in a college game is just, it's just too little for me. I don't think this should be about an average total for college football. So I'm glad we'd agree on that one, because I'm with you. MAC games get really weird. It's better when you're betting them after the MLB playoffs and they're playing like a Tuesday, so you can at least get through your Tuesday night. But it's a little nerve-wracking. So Mark has got a question. I know sharp bettors don't bet a line that moves away from them. What is your advice for bettors when the line is moving a favorable direction?
I'm assuming by favorable he means against you. You would have to be in the same reason that I don't know if I necessarily agree with the premise. If you have margin, right? You should just play it. If you trust the numbers and you're modeling this and you're like, I would play this. Let's just talk about a baseball game, for example. If the game was, and I'm exaggerating here, but just say the game was plus 100, overnight it moves to minus 120, and you made the game minus 150, and you trust your model and you trust your numbers and you know what you're doing, sharp bettors would still bet that edge, right? I don't know that is, but generally I agree with that though. Like I don't like to play a game I like that has moved too much because I'm like, wow, I missed out on the value. I'm not going to get CLV here, whatever. So this game is a perfect example of that. I don't know that I wouldn't play 57 if I just opened this up right now, in all honesty. But my model says there is room. So like, if you're watching this and you didn't bet on Monday like I did, or bet on Tuesday like Austin did, then you missed out on the best number. But I do think there's a little bit of room here. So what is your advice for bettors when the line moves in a favorable direction? I assume that means against you. If I were looking at this game and say the opposite happened, right, where I look at my model on a Wednesday and I'm like, oh, I got a little bit of movement against me, I would honestly still play it in a situation like this, because Saturday is a long ways away, right? Like we see these numbers on Saturday morning even move quite a bit. I trust my model. I get CLV somewhere around 70% of the time with this, and I've won 60% of the games over the last 3 seasons that I bet. Now, that's still a limited sample. I don't think I'm going to win 60% long term. But with the CLV I'm getting, I would assume that this number, if the opposite had happened, would come back to me in some way. So it just depends on what you trust. I don't generally add. I try to flat bet pretty much everything. I don't generally add, and certainly don't generally add things to my bet size throughout the week, just because sometimes there are people that have information that we necessarily might not have. If there's a little bit of I'm not really a Mac insider, right? So if someone knows the quarterback's a little bit hurt, or running backs can be out, or one of the good receivers like Dallas Dixon or something is out for Central Michigan, I'm not going to be very happy about my side there, right? I'm going to be less happy about it. So sometimes there are information that I'm not privy to that comes out on Saturday morning. But if it were Saturday morning or an hour before kickoff or whatever, and this number started moving against me, I would not be inclined to play it, right? Like that's where I would sort of cut it off. So sort of in the opposite direction. This is why you bet early though. You look at I'm looking at my numbers for the season. So far, I've assumed I've accumulated about 50% in CLV, average about 2% per play, across my, 25 games or so, 26 games that I bet this season. So, I trust my numbers. I intend on getting CLV pretty much almost all the time. And almost I think every single week so far, I've had a decent amount of CLV. So that's basically what I do. I think that's the best advice, is to be, either getting the bet package early, or if you're making your own numbers, bet really early and, to get the best of the number. Unless you're a professional sports bettor and you're investing hundreds of thousands of dollars into these games, you have so many outs, at least in most states, and even on, offshore books, you have so many outs that even if you're betting small amounts, you can get small amounts down across a lot of books if you wanted to, and you could have a decent amount of outlay out there in a game like this that has already moved 2 points in our direction.
Yeah, I think a key part of that is when in the week this move happens, right? Like if like I'm usually, so far this year, I've been getting down on Tuesdays, you're on Mondays. Like, for instance, the game we just talked about, the Oregon State game, you got 59 and I saw 58.5, and it's not that big of a move, but I'm not sitting here like, oh, what does somebody know? Like, they went against Frank and they went against my number. Like, what do they know? I'm still going to bet that now. Like you said, hour before kick, or even like Friday, Saturday, kind of when you're getting a picture. Because Friday, Saturday, teams are usually leaving for Friday. Like, they're leaving for these games on Fridays. News could get out that, say the Ohio quarterback didn't travel. All of a sudden, this game moves 2 points. Another instance, because I agree with basically everything that Frank said. Another instance would be if there is someone, say for instance, Frank and I talk about a game. We'll use Penn State, Iowa, for example. I like Penn State and he really likes Iowa. That's one of those that can be, if there's someone I respect in the market that I talk to, that could be something that could keep me off. Definitely if a game moves a certain way. They're respected. They're on that side. I'll probably just ignore this game because it's better off. I might be missing something. It's just better off to stay away from there. So
I think you probably do this too, where sometimes you have games. I honestly thought this was going to be one of them. And I'm not, I'm usually not right on these things. I just trust the numbers and play them anyway. But sometimes you have games where you look at and you're like, man, this number isn't going to go my way. I Oklahoma last week, right? And it went from 10.5 to 12. So I was happy. And then, of course, the backdoor happened. So, sometimes you have this feeling like, man, the market's just not respecting this team. It's just not going to go my way, yada, yada, yada. And then it happens anyway. And sometimes vice versa, right? You're getting number. And then, I feel that way about Penn State. I thought, they would get a lot of steam, and maybe a little bit, but I thought they would get a lot of steam, and that's sort of more subjectively than anything. But you're not always right with these things. That's why you just have to have a way to unbiasedly run these numbers. And despite you have to be willing to bet any team and bet any line and just make it a numbers driven thing regardless. My suggestion would be bet early in the week, especially in a football situation, in a baseball situation. Bet overnights or bet really early in the morning before the numbers move, because generally, if you're not doing this professionally, people smarter than you are going to have an edge on the market, and you should definitely respect what the market's doing above anything else.
Yeah, and what Frank is mentioning with early in the week with the professionals, they can't get down on Monday, definitely in college football, what they would want to. Limits are very, very low Monday. Usually Wednesday, you're starting to see college football limits start to get up there for big time bettors that want to get involved here. So I'm with you. Penn State, I haven't seen one person pick Iowa to win this game yet. It's scaring the crap out of me, because I'm like, I don't like, these things don't matter, but like, it is terrifying when you see like every media pundit on Penn State, and I'm sitting here like, holy shit, like what's going on here? But makes me a little nervous. We did see some movement for Penn State, so that makes me a little happier. But best bets, what do you want to go with here?
I'm going to go with this Oregon State game we mentioned. Covered two of my bets here. This was still one of my bigger edges and hasn't moved quite yet. So Oregon State, Washington State over 59, sort of hanging out there, around somewhere around that number, I believe. I made that game 63.5, so plenty of room there. Even if it hit 60, probably still playable.
Yeah, I'm going best bet Penn State, even though I haven't seen anybody on Iowa, but I just really can't get on board with. It's one of those things too, like when it's a good offense versus a good defense, like offense tends to win out because that's how the game is tailored. It's officiated for the offense to score more points. I just really hate this matchup, but I know it's a tough environment. Iowa's home field. It's tough. I can't see it. So I'm going Penn State money line is my best bet. You're going Oregon State over. Head over to the bet pack. Like we said, we bet early in the week. There's still some numbers out there though, for both of us. You have 6 plays this week. I have 7. I have a bet on one of the Friday night games. If you're looking for action there. So again, you got to head over Monday, Tuesday. We're all in there. Paulie's putting bets in. Siege. Last week, Siege had like 15 plays out there. So you're getting a ton of plays. Head over to elitesportsbetting.com. And again, try to get down early in the week, because that's going to be what is the most advantageous way of beating the market here and making some money long term. So any final notes from you, Frank, on this week? Any other sports, anything? What you got?
Yeah, Rusty got the Discord set up, so we've been chatting over there with everyone. All the different sports lined up. I got about 65 different chat rooms right now being sent to my phone. So thanks, Rusty. Thanks a lot for that. No, it's good that you guys that are subscribers, or even not, if something that interests you. I've seen a lot of people saying, we signed up for the Discord, so we'll have some bets in there. College basketball season's coming up. That's obviously huge for me. That's the most important sport for my sports betting season, throughout the year, and this season in previous seasons. We'll do some live betting in there too. So like if you get in the Discord, we'll watch some games. I'll run some mid-game models at halftimes, and we'll get additional bets hanging out in there. So, get over there and sign up. And, before the real fun happens with college basketball, betting 15 games on a Saturday type stuff happens, get over there and, hopefully have another good year.
Yeah, for anybody who doesn't know, we have Discord, the live chat. Everybody will be in there talking. To set it up, head over to your account page. You put your Discord name into your my account page on elitesportsbetting.com, and you'll be able to get the get into the Discord server. Everybody will be talking every sport. Like Frank said, college basketball starting, NBA and NHL right around the corner. Literally, the NHL starts next week. It's kind of crazy to me. It's just like sneaking up here, but hey, here we are. So we are into the full swing of things as obviously college football and NFL troll along. And we still got some golf going here, even though it always cracks me up because the weather's outside is getting colder where I live, and and golf still happens. It's funny, but they're in much nicer places than Pennsylvania. So they're living the life.
Vegas, little place called Las Vegas this week, and that's right. Paulie and I just did the PGA video, so you can, if whether you're watching on Twitch or YouTube, whatever, you can go into the into our little account page there and watch the video that we just did for golf. I hit St. Burns last week, my first outright in a while, 18-1 hit over there, which was good to see. And we're usually, usually these early season ones are the best ones to sort of get in before all the best players are all playing against each other. It's a little bit harder to pick winners at that point. So get in there now.
Yep. Oh, one comment. Yep. Mark, no problem, Mark. Anytime, anybody, if you ever have any questions, please hit up the comments. I know comments on Twitter have disappeared for with the transition from Periscope to Twitter Live. But if you watch us live on Twitch, if you watch us live on YouTube, you can comment. If you have any questions, have us clarify anything, feel free to comment in the future. Like Frank just mentioned, on Twitch, YouTube, replay the whole thing. Head over there, watch the golf preview as well. And like I said, bunch of plays in the bet pack for this week as we head into week 6 of the college football season. So for Frank, I'm Austin. That is another edition of the college football opening line presented by EliteSportsBetting.com. We will see you next week. As always, good luck on your bets, and we'll see you then.